So welcome back guys to the channel. Today I'm going to be predicting match day 11 for the Championship. This is going to be the last match day prediction before we have our second international break this year, which really sucks. We're going to have to move on and try and survive the next 2 weeks without champion. Also, apologies in advance because I posted my team of the month video on Wednesday. It meant that none of you could have really left your predictions for the Championship weekday predictions. I, on the other hand, managed to predict them just before Tuesday's games kicked off. I managed to get 2 of my predictions correct, which I'm really surprised about. I got the Middlesbrough and Preston game, and I got the Charlton and Swansea game, both completely correct. Now, with that aside, let's move on to match day 11 because we've got some cracking games going on. The Championship so far is really close, so I'm really excited to predict what I think is going to happen match day 11. Also, if you like what you see and you want to see regular Championship content on this channel, please give a video a like, a share and a subscribe. All of that will be tremendously appreciated. So without any further ado, let's move on to match day 11 of the Championship. So the first game starting out on Friday night, it is Birmingham versus Middlesbrough. 2 teams that I think have had disappointing results in midweek. Birmingham managed to lose to Wigan, which I can only describe as a League Cup howler. How he managed to let that trickle through him, I have no idea. And if that hadn't happened, I would have got 3 correct predictions because I predicted a 0-0 draw for that game. But Birmingham would feel very deflated that they lost that game. Middlesbrough, they did have a really good draw against Preston, which they did come behind. I think they did really well to recover. But you'd argue in the balance of play that Middlesbrough deserved to win the game. So they'd probably feel a little bit disappointed they didn't get more than a point on that game. What I've really liked about Middlesbrough recently, they play with a lot of unity and they play with a lot of pace and confidence. They've just not been very clinical. And the same goes to Birmingham. They've not been very clinical either. Birmingham have actually a really poor record against Middlesbrough over the years. Middlesbrough have got a far superior record. And I'm not sure what I want to say about this game. I think Birmingham, they'll want to try and have more confidence. I think they're a lot more of a good outlet at home rather than away from home. With Middlesbrough, I'm still yet to be convinced about them because some weeks they could look really good and some weeks they could just fall below par. I could see this going either way, but the fact that Birmingham have never beaten Middlesbrough makes this a little bit tougher for me. I'm going to predict this will be a 1-1 draw. I think this will be a really classic scrappy game where there'll be little chances, but then one team will have a goal out of nothing, but then the team will recover. So I think that's exactly what happened, and it'll be a 1-1 draw. So now we have Fulham versus Charlton. I think this will be a very entertaining game. Fulham are the top scorers in the league after their terrific 4-1 away performance to Reading. I'm anticipating that they're going to start going on a good run again. With Charlton, they had a really bad defeat against Swansea. They led under Jonathan Lecco in 66 seconds. It was a terrific start for them, but Swansea managed to soak up the pressure and managed to hit Charlton and managed to get 2 goals out of it. Then Danda managed to get Swansea back into it 50 minutes later, and Andre Ayew scoring the winner, his first Swansea goal since 2016, which I think is quite remarkable. I think Charlton approaching this game, they'd feel a little bit hard done by, but what I've seen for Charlton so far, they play in a diamond, but I cannot fault Lee Bowyer's tactics. So far, I have not really seen him do any sort of incorrect tactics against teams in games. However, they are facing a really tough Fulham side, which at home I think especially look really good at the moment. Fulham against Reading, well, they were just completely ruthless. Even though they may not have been playing well, they were 3-0 up in a flash, and Reading just couldn't deal with it. So what will play to Fulham's strength is that they'll have the ability to kill games off. I think now, even against Charlton, I think they'll be able to deal with Charlton. I'm anticipating this is going to be a 2-1 home victory to Fulham. I think Charlton away from home, even though they look okay, they're just not themselves at home. I feel like at home they are a really strong outlet, but not away from home. And Fulham as well, being the top goal scorers as well, the quality they have in their attack, I think would just be too much for Charlton. And I think Fulham will edge this one and get a 2-1 home victory. Now going to the 3 o'clock kickoffs, we first have Huddersfield versus Hull. Huddersfield must be pinching themselves right now. They've got their first win of the season, and it's against a relegation rival of Stoke City as well. And not only that, it was an away victory as well. It was a terrific game, and it was a terrifically fought game as well. It was a game that there was not much quality at all, if I'm going to be brutally honest. But one team pulled it out the bag, and that's turned out to be Huddersfield, and it was Bakuna who managed to score. It was pretty much the first bit of brilliant play from Huddersfield, really using their midfield, and did a defence splitting pass which sent Bakuna off, and then Federici literally had no chance. With Hull, they managed to squeeze a 1-0 home victory against Sheffield Wednesday. A game that I think was very closely contested. Sheffield Wednesday had plenty of chances. Hull had chances as well. And it was Tom Eaves in the end who actually managed to get the only goal in the end. What I will say against the head-to-head record with Huddersfield and Hull have a very, very strong record. 83% chance of Hull winning, apparently. 0%. Huddersfield have never won against Hull. And this will not be good readings, as Huddersfield will want to try and gather momentum from their fantastic victory against Stoke. However, I don't think this will happen, but I don't think Hull are going to blow them away. I actually think they will cancel each other out, get a 1-1 draw. I think Huddersfield will be fired up for this game, being at home. I think Hull as well. They've not been the most clinical outlet or the most clinical team in the league so far, so I don't think there'll be many goals, but I think neither team will win, so I will anticipate a 1-1 draw. Undoubtedly, a game I cannot wait to see is Millwall versus Leeds. Millwall managed to get a 1-1 draw against Luton, a game which was probably the fairest result. Millwall, I think, had a pretty strong first half. Luton started to grow more into the game and tested Bilkowski a little bit, but I think in the overall balance of play, 1-1 was probably the fair result. Leeds managed to get a 1-0 home victory against West Brom, resulting in West Brom's first defeat of the season. I think overall they did deserve it in terms of possession. I mean, if you look at the balance of the play, I think it was a game of two halves. Leeds dominated first half. West Brom, I think, were really strong second half. So I think it was a really, really good even contest. But you would just be amazed how Leeds didn't score more. But you will also be amazed how West Brom didn't score either, because they had many chances of their own. Alioski was actually the only one who managed to score for Leeds. It was not the prettiest of goals, but a goal is a goal regardless. Against Millwall as well, I think this will be really, really entertaining. Millwall have actually got a very strong record against Leeds. They've won half of their meetings against each other. I didn't back Charlton having a very strong record against Leeds either, and look what Charlton did. They managed to beat Leeds, so why can't Millwall? But Leeds, they've got so much quality, you can't just ignore that. They will have so many chances in the game, but you've got to question, are they going to be clinical? Is the likes of Patrick Bamford going to score the goals? Who else is going to score them? Would Nketiah start? I mean, if Nketiah starts, I probably may give Leeds a bit of a chance, because I think he deserves more game time. With Millwall, they're always going to play on set pieces. That's going to be their threat. Matt Smith will be their target man. With Millwall not having a really good run of form at the moment, and with Leeds being quite inconsistent in their form, this does have the potential of being very, very low scoring, I think. I'm going to predict that this will be... I'm going to predict a shock, a 1-0 home victory to Millwall. I can see Leeds being a little bit negative in the game maybe. If stuff doesn't go their way and they don't score early on, I could see this game panning out as a 1-0 home victory to Millwall. If Leeds score early, I think they'll hold on to it and get a win. But if things don't go their way going into half time, because you tend to see second half the players under Marcel Bielsa's very intense system get tired. So I think Millwall over the 90 minutes will win, but it'll honestly have to depend what happens in the first half, in my opinion. But I'm going to predict a shock, a 1-0 home victory to Millwall. Before we move on, apologies about having to change the lighting. I have to do 2 segments of recording. Also, I just got the news that Millwall have sacked Neil Harris, which really caught me by surprise in my opinion. I thought he had a pretty good performance against Luton Town. I know it's probably because Millwall have gone on a really bad winless run, but regardless, Neil Harris has done so much for Millwall, managing to get them to 8th in their first championship season, returning to the championship. The fact they've sacked him, I think, is a really risky move in my opinion. They're not like plummeting down in the relegation zone unlike Stoke are. They may get an assistant manager going, but I'm even more encouraged to say that Millwall will win by 1-0. Simply because I think the players will psychologically really would want this victory for Neil Harris and to probably give him a little bit of justice. So I'm still going to stick by my gut and say 1-0 Millwall. I think the game I'll be keeping my eye on the most is Nottingham Forest versus Brentford, because Nottingham Forest are the team in form at the moment. However, they have lost their winning streak to Blackburn Rovers. It was a game that was very, very closely contested. Blackburn had a lot of chances, especially in the first half. Nottingham Forest had chances of their own, the occasional chance here and then. But what Nottingham Forest are, they are clinical. As soon as they fell behind, like that, they got back into it under Joe Lolly. It was a great goal, by the way. With Brentford, they had probably arguably say a very disappointing performance against Bristol City. At home, Brentford, I think, probably should have won the game if you looked at the balance of play. Bristol City had probably had better chances, but if you look at the play overall and how Brentford really forced Bristol City behind, you'd probably say that Brentford should have held on. And Thomas Frank changed his formation, I think, after 70 minutes. I think tried to be a little bit more defensive. He played 3 centre-backs. Don't know why he did that, because doing that, you're almost inviting the opposition to attack you more, and that's exactly what Bristol City did. And eventually it just took a matter of time for Andres Weimann to equalise, cancelling out Josh Da Silva's wonder goal for Brentford out. In a head-to-head record, Brentford have a much better record against Forest, so this will be a real test for Forest if they want to be promotion rivals, if they want to be in the playoffs. Can they defy the odds and get a victory? I think they will. I do believe that Forest will have a little bit more about them. I'm really liking the play I'm seeing from Joe Lolly. I like what I'm seeing with Graben. I like the team overall. They've got so many options, and I like the unity about it. So I think I'm going to give them a 2-0 home victory against Brentford. This game could really go either way, but I think Nottingham Forest will have a little bit more of an edge. I think Brentford will struggle to break Forest down, and I think they'll struggle to score. Hence, I don't think they'll score. But I think Nottingham Forest will have a little bit more and win by 2-0. So now we have Preston versus Barnsley. Both of these teams resulting in a draw in midweek. Preston managed to draw against Middlesbrough, although they were ahead in that game, and I felt they probably should have done a little bit better to try and defend the lead, because they allowed Middlesbrough too much time to get back into it. With Barnsley, they had to fight really, really hard to get back into it. They were 1-0 up against Derby, and after 6 chances where they should have killed the game for Derby, Derby were then 2-1 up, and then in the 95th minute, Rudro managed to make it 2-2. It was absolute scenes, and I think it was a deserved result if you looked at it. Even though Derby had many chances, I think if you looked at the desire overall and the set-piece play, Barnsley deserved a draw at least. If you look at the head-to-head record, these teams don't win against each other too often. 67% of the time, it ends as a draw, which could easily happen. If you look at Preston, they are winless in 2, still unbeaten for quite some time, but they haven't won in 2 games. They need to turn these draws into wins. If they want to be a real promotion rival, they've got to convert these draws into wins. With Barnsley, they're still in the relegation zone, but I did see a lot of promise in their game against Derby. I think this year will be different. I think Preston will win by 3-2. I'm not too convinced with Preston defensively lately. Not that I don't think they're solid, but I think they allow teams to have too many chances against them. That's just from the balance of play that Alex Neil plays them. So I think they will concede 2, but I think this style also rewards you in managing to score plenty of goals as well. They are the second highest goal scorers as well. So I think they won't have any problems scoring. So I think this will be a 3-2 home victory to Preston North End. Now Queen's Park Rangers versus Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn managed to get a draw in their game. Queen's Park Rangers had a really, really bad performance against Cardiff. It wasn't a performance they looked terrible, but the way they kind of capitulated against Cardiff really, really didn't look good on them. I think Queen's Park Rangers, nothing really went for them. They hit the post in the first half. I think they were unlucky not to score at least 1 goal. Cardiff were just defensively resolute and they just couldn't get past them, and ultimately from set pieces, Queen's Park Rangers can deal with them. With Blackburn, they weren't 1-0 up from Armstrong. They did switch off at the wrong time to allow Forest to get back into it. However, I think it was a brilliantly balanced performance, managing to disrupt Nottingham Forest's fantastic streak going on. Here's a stat that'll blow your mind. Queen's Park Rangers have never beaten Blackburn in their 6 meetings against each other. So I think this will be really, really interesting to see if Queen's Park Rangers can recover. They've lost 2 in a row now, so in their poorest run of form so far this season, but they have got promise, more importantly. I think Queen's Park Rangers will bounce back, and I think they'll get a 2-1 home victory against a Blackburn side, which I think they will offer a little bit of threat. but I think they'll be a little bit more quiet in this game. I think they'll try and hold out a draw more likely, but I think Queens Park Rangers will have too much and win by 2-1. Then we have Sheffield Wednesday versus Wigan. Sheffield Wednesday obviously lost in their midweek game against Hull, a game that they did have some chances in actually, but they just were not clinical enough. Wigan managed to win pretty much in fortunate circumstances against Birmingham. It has given them a little bit of gap from the relegation zone. I think with these two teams, it'll be very, very interesting because Gary Monk is still trying to get used to Sheffield Wednesday. They look more resolute, more importantly, so I think Sheffield Wednesday have looked improved. Paul Cook seems to be doing something right for Wigan at the moment. He's managed to pick up more points recently. Sheffield Wednesday do have a very strong performance against Wigan, however, so I don't think I can really look against that. I think Sheffield Wednesday will have a lot of fun in this game and win by 3-1. I think Sheffield Wednesday will have one of these games where everything goes right for them. They'll score early on and then it could look really, really hideous going on. But Wigan may have a good spell and get back into it, but then Sheffield Wednesday will finish them off. So I think it'll be a 3-1 home victory to Sheffield Wednesday. Undoubtedly, the game that's going to be kept watch on many people's eyes. It's first versus last. Swansea versus Stoke. If Stoke don't have a good mindset in this game, this could be a really hideous game for them. Nathan Jones is still in charge of Stoke as well. He's been given a lot of pressure lately. With Swansea, however, they managed to break the miracle workers that are Charlton in a terrific performance, I thought. A really, really good away performance. Even though they were hitting the back foot really, really early on, they played well and they had to really, really be patient to get their chances, and they eventually took them and they managed to survive Charlton trying to bombard for an equaliser. I think that sort of gutsy performance shows why they should be up there, and I think they will be fighting for playoffs throughout the season. With Stoke, however, they've got other issues on their mind. They need to try and avoid relegation and get their first win on the board. Against a Swansea side, that is not going to be easy. I don't think there will be many goals in this game though. I think Stoke will be quite negative in the game and sit back quite a bit, but I think Swansea will eventually break them down and win by narrowly 1-0. Even though Stoke have a very, very strong record against Swansea, I think so far this season they've just not looked their normal self, so I think Swansea will win by 1-0. Before we move on, apologies about having to change the lighting. I have to do 2 segments of recording. A very interesting game's gone down the Hawthorns. West Brom versus Cardiff. West Brom lost their game against Leeds. It was a game where they did challenge Leeds. Pereira had a really, really good chance. I thought Robson Kanu was pretty good in that game as well. Cardiff themselves probably had their best game they've had so far this season, beating Queens Park Rangers by 3-0, for which was a fantastic home performance by Cardiff. Away from home though, there are still a few question marks. They're not as defensively resolute away from home, and they're not as creative away from home either. West Brom though, they've only got 1 defeat on their hands, and at home they look absolutely terrific. I cannot undermine that. Even though they did lose against Leeds, I think like Slaven Bilic is going to really want his side to perform even harder for this weekend's fixture. He felt his side should have got a draw, which if you look at the balance of the play, I think a draw with Leeds and West Brom probably would have been the fairest result. But I think they will really go for this game, and I think Cardiff will just about not be able to deal with it. I think West Brom will win by 2-1. I think this will be a very, very close game again. I think Cardiff will compete, but I think West Brom overall will just have a little bit more quality. So I'm going to say a 2-1 home victory to West Brom. So the penultimate game this weekend is Bristol City versus Reading. Bristol City came with an away point against Brentford, which I think they may have been a little bit lucky getting that point, with Brentford doing really, really well, especially in the second half, going 1-0 up from a really good Josh De Silva goal. But Bristol City, to be fair to them, did really, really well to get back into the game. Andres Weimann with a terrific goal. Reading themselves, they've been in the back end of a really bad 4-1 home defeat against Fulham, although they did really well to get their consolation goal. Reading didn't look too bad actually. They just were nowhere near as clinical as Fulham are, and Fulham on the counter-attack are really, really fast. It was more of a traditional Fulham performance where they'll just blow teams away, and Reading simply couldn't deal with it. I think in this game it's going to be a little bit closer. If you look at the reverse fixture, Reading only just beat Bristol City by 3-2, for which was a very entertaining game. I think Bristol City will have an edge on them, however. I just have a feeling that with the quality that they have defensively, and they've got a fantastic goalkeeper in Bentley, they've got a fantastic midfield, and their attack as well with JG and Wyman is actually looking okay at the moment, and they're coping well without Benicophobe. With Reading, no, they've been slumping a little bit. They're 21st, just above the relegation zone. And the fact that Huddersfield have picked up their first win and Barnsley managed to get a point against Derby, Reading have got to really be careful not to try and lose this game. However, I think they will lose this game. I think Bristol City will win by 3-0. I'm anticipating a really good performance for Bristol City. I think they'll continue riding high with confidence. I think just with the quality, and then with Reading probably having a little bit of a hangover from Fulham, I think Bristol City will capitalise and get a 3-0 home victory. So the final game to predict this weekend is Derby versus Luton. A lot of eyes are on Derby at the moment. They threw a 2-1 lead away against Barnsley. From what I'm hearing with Derby fans, they were ashamed that Tom Lawrence even started in that game and Mason Bennett was brought on as a substitute. They subsequently didn't want them anywhere near the squad, though Tom Lawrence was heavily involved in Derby's first because he was the one who drew the foul for the penalty. Derby, I thought, were really poor in this game. They looked a little bit predictable in their passing, if I'm going to be honest. It's a style that I can see that can work, but you don't have the right players for it. They could be a bit too pragmatic, and the whole play overall could seem really slow. With Luton, they had a 1-1 draw against Millwall, a game that they really struggled to get going. It was until the second half, or when Millwall started to threaten, that Luton started to get their hold into this game. For this game, however, I don't anticipate many goals in this game. Derby so far, especially at home, have not looked all that clinical. Luton so far, they have managed to score plenty of goals. However, they've conceded at least a goal in every single game. They've not kept a clean sheet yet, which they need to sort out as soon as they can. I'm actually going to predict a really shock result. I think Luton are going to win by 3-1. I think Luton, sometimes away from home, they can have a really positive performance. Away from home as well, they have not got anything to lose either. With Derby, a lot of eyes are going to be on them, and I think they could feel a little bit pressurised of it. And I feel like if they played like they did against Barnsley, they could be completely slept by Luton. And Luton completely slept their opposition, Barnsley. So why not predict the same for this? So I'm going to predict a 3-1 away victory to Luton. So there you have it, guys. These are my championship score predictions. Very varied. I wanted to include a few shocks in this weekend, but also quite a few high-scoring games and low-scoring games as well. Do you agree with my predictions? Let me know in the comments down below. How do you think your team's going to do in this weekend before the international break? Let me know in the comments down below. But that will all wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw the end of the video. And as always, for another weekend, take care.